When I was a kid, hunting, killing, and eating was a normal life. In order to complete missions of survival, your heart allowed a bit of meanness in your mind. More importantly, controlling that meanness is a lesson to learn. This is a story on growing up. My mom was driving us home from the grocery store. As we approached a bridge under Pond Street, I saw a beaver crossing the road. I yelled, "Stop! I want to grab it for some gloves or a hat or something." As she pulled into the Washington Tug's lot, I hit the ground running, and before the beaver made it off pavement, I stomped on its tail. My plan for bagging the quarry for its pelt was to knock it out with a big stick and run it through with a sharp broken branch. Since this was my first encounter with the wild beaver, I knew little of the beaver's strong will to survive. When I stomped his tail, that beaver stood up on his hind legs and whirled around to face me. His fangs bared, his arms stretched out with claws the size of a mountain lion. Buddy, believe me, when I saw the anger in that beaver's eyes and his fierce determination to survive, the first thought through my mind was, this guy's going to chew my flipping leg off. My second thought and immediate action was getting my foot off his flat tail. Surprisingly, the beaver lowered his paws, his mouth closed, then he blinked with both eyes and slid down the bank to the creek. Later that summer, or maybe the next, I camped the Okefenokee with a troop of Franklin County Boy Scouts. Because I lived in Stevens County, this was an honored privilege granted by my Uncle Fuzz the Scoutmaster. Well, those were some cool guys in the troop, even if they were Franklin County dirt busters. I knew they all had the jibber-jabs on me because I was from the next county over, but we all got along and had a great time on the road to the swamp in the back of an old milk truck. At the ranger station for check-in, time was allowed for leg stretching and looking around. As I wandered over to the vending machines to get a Coke and peanuts, I saw a raccoon digging in a trash can. He was throwing stuff all over and making a general mess of the place. I ran up hollering to scare him off, and he moved out to the trail. As I moved closer, I thought maybe I could impress the guys in my uncle's troop if I catch him by the scruff of his neck and carry him back to the milk truck like a kitten. I was a few boot steps from his tail when that raccoon whirled around, stood up on his hind legs, and with fangs that would make any cottonmouth proud, he snarled at me while gnashing mountain lion claws in the air. That's when the second thought hit my mind. Those Franklin County boys are going to laugh themselves silly if I crawl back to the milk truck with a slashed face and chewed up kneecaps after tangling with that wild raccoon. So I backed up real slow, and that darn coon started coming toward me. My next thought was to run, but I overcame my fear, stood my ground, and attempted my best bear impression. You know what? That raccoon dropped down to all fours, turned around, and scuttled off down the trail. As for me, I turned and ran as fast as I could back to the milk truck. I never looked back to see if he was chasing. About a year or so later, I was convinced still that I am the king of the forest. I am stronger, bigger, and smarter than any animal within. I hunt, I fish, I can skin a rabbit with my bare hands. I can start a fire in a rainstorm. I can stay warm with a pile of leaves and make a soft bed out of pine trees. But this story is about being mean. When required, a little meanness can help a situation. Too much meanness can be harmful. I did not realize where a little ends and too much begins. It takes a bit of growing to understand things like that. They say God can forgive our confusions and wrongs. I have a feeling that don't mean nothing to a beaver or a raccoon. Anyway, there was this one time at band camp. Well, really, there was this one time I cut English class in high school and hit the woods hoping to find a shortcut home. Well, as I hiked down a hill covered in pines, I saw a possum skidding along. I was still aggravated and tormented because of some stupid conflict involving classmates. That poor old possum picked the wrong time and place to be skidding. This particular possum was not an ordinary possum. It was almost entirely black. I mean really dark, with a skeleton-like white face, but jet black every part except its feet. Kind of like an albino deer, but the opposite in possums. Anyway, being mad and mean at the time, I ran down that possum and grabbed it by the tail, expecting it to roll over and play dead. The first thought in my mind was to slap that thing against one of those trees and whoop it like I wanted to whoop those crapheads tormenting me. Maybe it would soothe my anger and allow me to accept their presence in my world. You know, take it out on the possum and avoid a Hatfield McCoy war. Then, when I snatched it by the tail, instead of playing dead, that possum started shredding the ground with its mountain lion claws. I watched as its claws turned red as it tore away from my grasp of its tail. Then it whirled around to face me, intently stood on its hind legs, and bared its fangs like a rattlesnake hitting a rabbit. Believe me, possums have big, big fangs. Then I looked straight into that possum's face. It was bony, lips curled, nose snarling. Drool was dripping from its skeleton jaws like slime off a jelly worm. Its whiskers looked like porcupine quills ready to dart my eyes. Was I scared? Nah. Hell yeah, I was scared. But more than that, I was mad at those dunderheads for continually messing with me. I was angry for having to cut class just to avoid being in the same room. To me, that possum was them, and now I had him by the tail. While I continued to hold that possum, he squiggled around trying to bite my hand as I lifted him off the ground. I swung and plopped him back to the ground, and he started shredding dirt again. My next thought turned sympathetic. What exactly was I doing? I'm tormenting this poor possum the same as those who tormented me. I did not deserve it, and this dang old possum doesn't either. Am I just as bad as they? Of course, or worse. I know growing up doesn't happen in a moment, but that moment provided a large part. Tears made it tough to see. Why was I being so mean? I had grown to hate mean people. Hate is a sin, and I really don't want to hate myself or anything else, because that's just wrong. I was scared to let go of his tail, afraid of what this terrified and scared animal would do to me if given the chance. I knew I was wrong for being mean and certainly deserved his retaliation, but as I looked at the possum, there was no anger in his eyes. The possum's eyes, despite all the scariness of his face, were round and wide, like puppy eyes. He did not hide a hope for release. His eyes let me know he just wanted to finish his skitting. His face displayed a resolve for freedom. I hope his eyes also held some kind of forgiveness for my stupid meanness. When I released my grip, it ran a few feet, then skidded off trail into the woods. I don't pray often, but this one time, nowhere near band camp, I prayed a request of extreme importance. Please help me not be mean again. Guess what? That prayer's worked for more than 40 years. Mercy and compassion became my best friends. I realized there is no meanness in defense, and that meanness survives within aggressive offense. I maintain a healthy attitude while striving to avoid attacks from others. I manage my frustrations and angers with simple thoughts that madness leads to meanness. Growing up is more than just getting stronger and taller. Learning to flex your mind instead of your muscles is a step on a path toward peacefulness.